Brian Gorsegner appears to be your average punk rocker turned New Jersey dad. But in truth, he's really an alt-rock Indiana Jones. An urban archaeologist bent on recovering long-lost relics of the rock and roll that changed his life. A music booking agent by day, Gorsegner has spent his nights and weekends for more than 2 decades combing through the basements and attics of aging punk rockers, their families and obsessive fans, such as himself, sleuthing for forgotten artifacts. And in November, the 41-year-old unearthed a treasure trove at an old house in Queens, finding the original case for Johnny Ramone's favorite guitar, an instrument which sold for close to $1 million at auction in 2021. To a lot of people, it might not mean a lot, but for me or fellow collectors, it's like finding the Mona Lisa buried in a bunch of trash. It's crazy, Gorsegner told the Post. As with most of his finds, Gorsegner was put on the trail of Ramone's guitar case by word of mouth. This time when an old NYC rocker reached out to share stories about being friends with the Ramones, the Misfits, and other seminal punk bands from the 70s and 80s. After swapping stories, the rocker told Gorsegner they were moving and planning to empty most of their house into a dumpster, but welcomed him to peruse the piles of old musical gear for something he might want. The house had fallen into disrepair and Gorsegner had to claw through the place with a crowbar at times. He was able to pry 45 records and posters and old set lists from cabinets until he stumbled upon the guitar case and knew he'd struck gold when he saw Ramones stenciled across it in white paint. I'd seen it before. There's a pretty famous photograph by David Godlease that he took of the Ramones playing at CBGB's in '77. Gorsegner said, referring to the legendary East Village punk club where the likes of Patti Smith, Madonna, the Talking Heads, Mink DeVille, and Blondie got their starts. The photo has their gear all laid out on the stage, and they have these really great-looking hardware store-like stencils on them. So I knew as soon as I saw the case that it was one of those original cases, he added. Having all but forgotten it, the old NYC rocker went on to recall a Ramones show in 1978 or 79 where the case's latch broke and Johnny pitched it into a dumpster behind the club. But the rocker needed a case, and Johnny said to grab it if he was willing to repair the latch. So the rocker did and went on to use it for years. This thing was in the trash 4 years before I was born, Gorsegner said. And now, going on 50 years later, here it is almost getting ready to hit another dumpster. That kind of excitement is why I really just got so into doing this stuff. Gorsegner was able to use Godless Photo to verify the case. A tear on its leatherette covering perfectly matched one on a case in the 1977 photo. And after talking to some sources determined it was likely the case Johnny's famous white Mosrite guitar came in when he bought it that year. When you make those discoveries, it's just the coolest S***T in the world. While it was one of his best finds, Gorsegner has more than 20 years of hits under his belt dating back to when he first started scouring for punk rock artifacts in the late 90s. He fell in love with the genre when he was 13 and started playing in bands of his own. By the late 90s, he was working in a screen printing shop alongside a number of other rockers supporting their music, and a competitive memorabilia collecting scene sprung up among the group. Over the years, he's crisscrossed the country times. He now takes his wife and 11-year-old daughter under the guise of family vacations, following down leads and tips about collections or caches of artifacts that might be up for grabs. Some of his best scores include fan mail a 15-year-old Dave Grohl wrote to the band Necros requesting stickers and DC tour dates, an early Beastie Boys concert poster hand-drawn by the band, and metal spikes from the Misfits leather jackets that one of their fathers machined at his factory job. But Gorsegner's favorite finds are posters and flyers that bands made when they were young and looking for a start, or high school kids in love with the music as he once was. The fact that 40, 50 years later, those original artifacts, these cut and paste flyers, and the fact that the original mock-ups still exist in someone's attic somewhere, that is just mind-blowing to me that it never got left in a copy machine. It never got a beer dumped on it. And that is truly an artifact in my opinion. When you peel poster off a telephone pole on the Bowery in 1978, that's not supposed to still be around, he added. When I discovered punk when I was 13 and I started playing in bands, it became my entire life. It saved me in high school. I don't know that I would have made it through a lot of stuff if it wasn't for those bands and that scene, he said. He's even written and published a book, Ancient Artifacts, documenting his collection alongside interviews with people who made the music and saw it performed.